Hey folks, welcome into the BN Cubs podcast presented by Ankin Law, 312-6 million, injury law made personal. I am Brett Taylor, joined by Michael Cerami to talk Cubs, and we have a special guest today. We have Dave Cook from Feldco. You know Feldco because we talk about it every week. He is here to join us to talk Cubs. Dave, welcome. Huge Cubs fan. I can see, for those watching on YouTube, you can see he has he's got the good pod background going right now because he's got the Cubs wall art in the back. I have my Cubs.
What is that actually?
The wall,
his
wall art. Yeah, I was wondering.
That's an old piece of original art. Like it's a hand painting that was done probably 35 years ago. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, if you need a reason to check out the YouTube, this is one. This is a pretty cool piece of.
Yeah, take a look at it.
You see a lot of the same stuff in most people's offices. You know, you see the bleacher drawings or I have a Sosa post. Most people don't have that silly face of Sammy Sosa in a model style, but you see a lot of normal things and that one's pretty unique. So that is pretty cool.
Yeah, I like it.
Well, so Dave, I have to ask the obligatory Cubs fan question. When I meet a new Cubs fan, where were you when the Cubs won it all? How did you take in Game 7?
So I really, really wanted to go to the game and I couldn't. So I was here locally, really close to Wrigley Field, a little corner bar in Wrigleyville.
Which one?
It was on, it was like two blocks west of Clark.
Tunes?
It's kind of a little hole in the wall bar. Nice. For the life of me, I can't recall the name of the bar, but I do remember a lot of the people there, and there were a lot there. So, the ups and downs of that game, and just it was crazy.
Did you try to navigate the sea of people afterward,
totally.
Out on the streets trying to?
So I went right after the win. I rolled over to Clark and Addison and dove into the sea. Yeah, it was great.
We had
to be there.
Yeah, we were two ships passing in the night. I was fighting my way to the marquee at the same time.
Yeah, I was there.
Oh, that's awesome. So, so let's talk Cubs. Week that was. Cubs are in Washington right now playing the Nationals. It's interesting. This is the first time, Michael, in several weeks, right? We've had the typical Thursday off day cadence going. Cubs are playing tonight, so we have to make sure not to say anything too foolish, such that when people are listening, that it will immediately be, eradicated by whatever happens in the game. But fortunately, some of what happened in last night's loss, Cubs lost 2-0 to the Nationals, sets up a lot of stuff that I wanted to talk about anyway. And so specifically what I wanted to get into is, you'll see how this connects to the Cubs, but Mackenzie Gore. Okay. So Nationals starting pitcher, lefty, absolutely dominant last night and has indeed been dominant all season. So Cubs fans, if you were not paying attention to Mackenzie Gore this season until last night, don't feel too bad about how he performed against the Cubs, or I should say how the Cubs performed against him, because he's been doing that to pretty much everybody this year. To that end, what I find fascinating about how good Gore is this year, and as I try to extrapolate it to the Cubs and Cubs prospects and sort of how we think about players coming up, is it wasn't that long ago that Mackenzie Gore was almost a forgotten prospect. If people will remember, he, of course, came to the Nationals in the Juan Soto trade, but he was like the third or fourth or fifth piece in that trade because in a past life, he was the top pitching prospect in baseball with the Padres. He was like, as top tier as it gets in terms of like a guy who is definitely going to be great in the big leagues. And then he got something maybe close to approximating the yips, kind of fell off the radar. And I don't want to say he was a throw-in in the Soto deal because he had reached the big leagues at that point, but he was struggling and was just not a prime piece of that trade. And then for a couple of years with the Nationals, he kind of was a middling, mediocre type that was maybe never going to reach his ceiling. And now at age 26, after all of that time, he's exploding. And I think sometimes we think about those trajectories a lot with not top prospects, we sort of think about those guys building their way to success, right? But when it comes to the tip-top guys, for example, someone like a Cade Horton, who just arrived in the big leagues, but was always considered a top prospect from the moment the Cubs took him 7th overall in 2022. We don't think about those guys having to sort of go through the wilderness, fall off the radar, and then come back and then fulfill who we thought they might be. And so I guess I just wanted to pick your brain. You can get into any specific Cubs that it sort of, it tickles for you thinking about going forward, but just sort of, I'm curious your perspective on how we seem to sometimes be quick to toss away the best prospects who then have to work through some stuff at the big league level until they break out.
Yeah, so Gore is a great example, and he actually, I was looking into him more closely. You did a good job teeing it up, but I think you almost sold him short. He wasn't just the top pitching prospect in baseball at one time. He was like, this is the top pitching prospect that baseball has had for a while. Incredible. And then for him to be not the primary piece of that Juan Soto deal was, even at the time, striking. It was correct, and we all are aware of where that was, but it was like, man, I can't believe this is just a guy now and not like the piece of this puzzle. But he started performing a little bit better last year through 32 starts and looked good. But this year he is certainly hitting his like actually peak potential. And, I don't know if it's just like our monkey brains trying to craft narratives around these guys where it's like, a top prospect, in a weird way, we give them a lot less slack than that is, I think, the point you're trying to make, sort of, right? And so, but here's a version of this, and it's not even a current Cub, is Kyle Schwarber. He obviously did hit some important productive milestones while he was with the Cubs, but talk about a guy who is just over the last year and a half, 2 years, blossoming into like that true all around full on offensive powerhouse. Yeah. He had a career, like, don't get me wrong. He did. He's made some money, but he has turned into one of the premier offensive talents in baseball. And that took a long time. So, we see like it comes in short spurts, like Pete Crow-Armstong comes up in September, has 19.
He was someone I was kind of thinking of.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, look at what he's doing now, So I don't know. I think that we have our expectations set so high that underwhelming them, we lose that thread of like development not being linear type of thing. But, I don't know why. I don't know why we're more willing to have some lesser heralded prospect have a good month and then be like, well, now this is the guy. And it's like, well, is he, I don't know. It must just be the narrative forming parts of our brain. But is there another player Dave, that you were thinking?
Well,
yeah.
Don't you guys
I was going to kick it to Dave.
As position players, pitchers typically develop a little bit later than a lot of other position players. It seems like, anyway, the pitchers oftentimes are kind of in the prime of their career, late 20s, early 30s, sometimes even later. As opposed to a lot of guys that can come up, Pete Crow-Armstong, who can tee it up, and Juan Soto,
yeah, right.
that really, really hit it early. It just seems like pitchers.
Dave, this is amazing. It's like you've been doing this a million years, because you naturally threaded that to what I wanted to carry that point through, which was the guy opposing Mackenzie Gore last night was Matthew Boyd, who is now in his mid-30s, who, by the way, was one of these guys who was not heralded as a prospect coming up. He kind of just worked at it, and he got some time, and then, they got hurt, and he had some okay years, and then time gets away from you, and suddenly he's in his mid-30s, and now you feel, again, this is to borrow your point, Michael, some of this is monkey braining a narrative, but now you feel like, oh, he's finally who he was going to become, right? And he's looking outstanding, right? He's putting together one of his best seasons in a very long time, adding together with the stub of last year with the Guardians. And it's not hard to imagine for pitchers in particular. And I do wonder, like Dave does, whether we just think we see this, or there's really something to it, that we know physically as humans, there's a window where we have a peak, right? And you do wonder if the possibility for all that a pitcher brings to his performance, the guile, the pitchability, the pitch mix, the sort of the knowledge and execution is a little less dependent on physicality as some of the things that we expect position players to do. And so I do wonder if, and I wonder if we're going to continue to see more stratification in sort of when pitching prospects arrive versus when position players arrive, because we have seen it getting younger and younger and younger on the positional side. And indeed, and guys, they often struggle in the current environment when they come up as early as they do. But maybe that's just the way it's going to be going forward. Maybe we're going to see that teams have figured out getting those young position players up early, like we've seen with the Cubs. Matt Shaw coming up with very little minor league experience. Moises Ballesteros coming up at a super young age, initially struggling, learning from it and growing. Maybe that's way more valuable on the positional side than for pitchers. Yeah.
I mean, and I think Cam Smith was one of 3 guys now that was drafted last year.
Yeah, 3.
And
that's a ton, by the way. 3 up before the anniversary of the draft. That's a ton.
It would be a ton, in my opinion, if they were up by the end of the year. If 3 were up by, it just doesn't happen. And you made a really great point that made me so excited. Is that if that does start happening more frequently, boy, the draft becomes a lot more fun, because the worst part about the baseball draft is that you're like, wow, we got a great guy. Can't wait to see him in 4 years. I mean, like that's like, and for some of the top of the first round prospects, they're high school players. 4 years is like aggressive because they're 17, 18, 19 years old. So they'd still be coming up at 22, 23, 4 years later. Whereas in football, you draft your starting quarterback for the next season. What a huge, insane difference. And so if that starts becoming more prevalent, and if, in the next CBA, maybe draft picks become tradable, I actually see that as like a huge fun explosion of possibility for baseball to be more interesting in ways some of the other sports already are. I know that we're kind of losing the thread there, but I just got so excited when you said that the other day. I was like, man, I really do hope that they start doing that. And you're right. Cam Smith is maybe a good example. Maybe he would have been hitting, maybe he's getting to the place that he would have gotten sooner, even if the path is more fraught on the way, because he's playing up to his competition. And so maybe that's a lesson that they're learning. And let's also not let them entirely off the hook. A lot of the reason that the players the owners, let's not let them off the hook, is that young players are cheap and pretty good. Sure. And this has been a big gripe of the union for a while, right? Is like the mid-tier veterans are just being replaced by cheaper rookies who are performing at similar levels, but it's just logical. It's just competitive, business. Right. And so there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, that's what's happening. And if they can be that good that soon, I think it's good for the sport. And I just hope Cam Smith doesn't make us pay for it too badly. So I wanted to talk about the offense a little bit. I wanted to talk about Michael Busch, and I'm gonna carry this over this way, because I was looking at this. And so Dave, I'm gonna quiz you a little bit, but in a friendly way that no one could know the answer. So don't feel too badly. I think this is going to be an article I write later today. So it's June the 5th. As of June 4th, how many players do you think on this year's Cubs offense are better than last year's Cubs offense? So how many players do you think we have this season through June 4th performing better than the best player on the Cubs last year?
At that position, or
no?
You're saying team. Better than the very best player last year. Okay.
Qualified. Yeah, I know. This is why it was surprising. So whoever was the best offensive
who the
player,
very best player was last year.
Yeah, I mean,
I know,
you actually might be surprised by who it was.
Well, let's think about that. Who would it have been?
I could give you that because
Yeah,
the point is
let's have that one
surprisingly,
Seiya?
it's
Seiya?
It's Mike Talkman was the best player.
That's not surprising to me.
Yeah,
that doesn't surprise me.
He had a really great start, if you recall. So
yeah.
he had
I like Mike Talkman.
Yeah, I mean he was great.
Yeah, he's having a good year again.
Local guy,
yeah, Southside, yeah. Palatine Pounder. Right. So he had a 120 rated runs created plus. He was slashing 264, 366. So good OBP, good average, and slugging roughly 400. So he was the top offensive player last year at this time.
What was
how many players?
Line?
The slash line was 264, 366, 396. And that's a 120 weighted runs created plus, which means he's about 20% better than the league average player.
Yep.
So this year,
at that time,
yeah, right.
So if the quiz, if I understand the rules of the guidelines of the quiz, this year's how many players this year are at or above that?
Yeah.
I think a lot are pretty close. Yeah, I think there's probably 4 or 5.
Yeah, that's where I was landing quickly. Was 4 or 5. Yeah.
So there's 4 that are qualified, and if you include guys with at least 100 plate appearances, and Miguel Amaya, there's 6. So we have 6 players, and there's not insignificant playing time for either of them. I mean, those are the starting. Yeah. I know they've gotten.
How about the catcher position? I mean,
incredible.
They are getting it this year. It is just they're great,
especially compared to last year. Last year at this time, that position, it wasn't just that they weren't getting any value out of it. It was a affirmative drag on the performance, and now
it doesn't seem to be a 4-win difference. On the defensive side at all. I mean, it's like they're throwing runners out. They're calling good games. I mean, it's impressive.
Well, what perfect tie back in. Miguel Amaya is kind of a version, although he's a position player, catchers are probably closer into the camp as pitchers where their development tail is a lot longer because so much of what they bring to the game is, I don't want to say mental, but it's like experience-based,
experiential,
experiential and confidence building, receiving, things that don't necessarily age the way other physical positions do. And so Miguel Amaya, I mean, it's a bummer that he's hurt because he was having an incredible season. And the offensive side, honestly, although it was so great to see, was less of a surprise to me than the strides I think we saw him take behind the plate. As a receiver, as a framer, as a base running catcher. He's looked really incredible. And I think it's a huge loss without him, but even Reese McGuire has done all right in the meantime. I mean, have you guys seen anything from Miguel Amaya that has stood out to you?
Well, I'm going to jump in just to note a general point, and then you can comment, Dave. How much do we talk in the abstract about the impact that catching has on pitching, right? Like we talk about the soft factors of catchers. We talk about game planning. We talk about in-game adjustments. We talk about the little things that a catcher does to help manage the game and maximize the performance of his pitchers. And so I think we talk about that a lot in the abstract, and we get quotes every now and again from guys like, Miggy called a good game, or Carson was right there with me, he helped me with some adjustments. And we certainly have seen that this year. But I think more broadly, we need to note, in fairness, whenever the Cubs are getting a lot of really good pitching performances, particularly they've got a lot of guys who are, coming back from turns in their career and sort of succeeding at a level that we might not otherwise expect for them. I think some of that, of course, the majority of it will always go to the pitcher himself. Okay. And some of it we have to give to the staff and sort of the process that went into selecting that player and sort of what you wanted them to work on, how you wanted them to tweak their game, all of that. But we know enough about this game to know that some of that is coming from the catchers. And so I think we need to note for the Cubs, particularly as the pitching, the pitching is succeeding despite weathering some pretty significant injuries. And I think some of that has to be given as a credit to the catchers.
No doubt. I mean, think about when Wilson Contreras the Cubs, there was no reason not to believe in his bat. And the Cubs let him go pretty quickly and wholly, in large part.
And the Cardinals moved on. The Cardinals
really
moved
fast.
on from catching like after 2 weeks. They were like, well, maybe he's no catcher
and then
anymore.
they moved his arm, his setup so far in that he shattered his arm on a backswing because that was like in a last ditch effort to improve his catching. I mean, so clearly the Cubs think that way, and I think you can also say that the category of catcher they've targeted, even as backups over the last several years, are all the same exact cut of catcher. And Carson Kelly has been one of the best all around, and I think a really great mentor for Amaya, who's had some good ones. I mean, Yan Gomes is probably a good guy to have around too. I think the catching situation has been a huge plus.
So catchers in general, I mean, if you look at baseball, team structure, catchers are always, or is a position that, you'll give up some on offense for the quality of defense, right?
Absolutely.
And to get what they're getting, rounded out from a team like, Carson Kelly and Amaya, I mean, it's really impressive. I mean, you got to give these guys a ton of credit. I mean, they're the field boss on the team. I mean, they're there essentially holding it all together, and they're getting an awful lot out of that position right now.
Okay, but what we do need to talk about.
Well, I just want to note, to Dave's point, just to supplement that, like, we forget sometimes how much these guys are working on that has nothing to do with their game prep to perform on offense, and to do all that they need to do working with pitchers and working on their skills as catchers. It makes it all the harder for them to perform well on offense. So it's just like doubly impressive that these guys are.
I think it's the toughest. I think it's aside from pitcher, maybe, I think it's the toughest position on the field for sure.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's true, but we need to talk about something now, because I think this has gone on a little bit too long. Is that Carson Kelly is his offensive contributions earlier in the year were Barry Bonzian, and he still looks good
the first 2 weeks.
But are we really what's Craig Counsell's faith in him, in that he is either the cleanup hitter or even batting as high as third when there's a lefty and they want it seems as though that's either one of two things. Craig Counsell has suddenly become very stupid and doesn't know how to look at data from the before and after, which is obviously not the case. I don't think that's the case. Or he still sees his swing or his approach looking as consistent as ever. And maybe he thought, sure, he was overperforming then, and he's just, but how much longer can Kelly be the third or fourth hitter?
I can actually address that a little bit, just because I was looking at this yesterday, because we have all noticed perhaps that his performance has declined since that hot start, and actually going back to mid-April, he's been about a league average hitter by the results, which, just as a note, I would love Carson Kelly as a league average hitter. That is great. That's a great halftime catcher. Okay. So I'm not saying that, but to Michael's point, that's not a guy that you insert in the middle of this lineup, unless there are other evaluative metrics that are telling you he's likelier to outperform that. And so I did look, and during that stretch, his quality of contact isn't that much worse. Really? Walks and strikeouts, still good. BABIP is 200. I mean, it's just extraordinarily low. The biggest thing that has changed is he's not hitting home runs. That's it. And so debate what that comes from. He had a couple of them knocked down at Wrigley over the last couple of weeks. So, if both those leave the park, home runs have a pretty strong impact on your slash line over the course of, a month. So I do wonder, to your point, Michael, but I do think, I'm glad you teed it up, because it's something that's sort of in a tab on my computer right now, waiting for the right moment to be like, hey, should we talk about this? So yeah.
He needs to either have a 4-for-4, 2 doubles and a homer performance, or an 0-for-4 3K performance. Then you could write the article.
And then we can talk about it. We call that that's how the sausage is made, folks.
Yeah, exactly.
We're prepared in either direction, but
right. What about you? I mean, Dave, do you think is Kelly, is that a guy you would still bat in the middle of the lineup?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you guys completely. Maybe Craig Counsell and I think this is why you pay, what is it, $4 million a year? You know, like maybe he sees something, or he's got the Karnak card on the
double
forehead.
that, yeah.
You know, it's like it's I'm sorry, whatever the number is, but it's big.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, typically, you know, you regress to the mean, right? Somewhere, and he's gonna do it at some point, but to be able to capitalize while you can, well, okay, there's nothing wrong with that. But I do think, given the strength of the lineup offensively right now, it's amazing. I mean, I can't believe the production they're getting, you know, all the way through it. And it doesn't seem that he's a 3 or 4.
Yeah. I mean, and just to close the thread on that too, I have been thinking this, let's say the Cubs could have this exact record that they have right now, but instead of having it built primarily on the offense's success, the rotation's been good. The bullpen's been good for a while now. Like, don't get me wrong, but the offense is the highlight of this team. Would either of you switch and have like this quality of offense, but as the starting rotation? Like, is that a more fun team for you to watch, having like a dominant rotation, just shut teams out? Or do you prefer the team that is smacking homers and scoring 6+ runs per game? I know that sounds, but I don't think it's as easy. Like, there's value in having,
I'm going to tell you why,
that type of rotation.
I understand. Yeah. No, I understand. And listen, having a dominant rotate, like we've seen some of that over the years with the Cubs, and that is fun too. But the reason this for me is more fun is because now when they're down 3 or 4 runs in the 6th, 7th, 8th inning, I'm still locked in because I'm like, they do that. They come back from that all the time. This offense is really good. Yeah. These Cubs are the team that other teams are like, we're up 4, but we can't lay off, man, because they'll cluster runs together. So maybe that's just a little bit of the fact that we haven't seen an offense like this with the Cubs since 17, 18. And so it's nice to see it just in that regard too.
Dave?
I think, to your point, it's a great question. I would take either, but
yeah, right.
But I love this. It is great to be able to be locked into a game. And as you're like last night, I was talking to my son, and in the 9th inning, we were like, okay, I think we got this. There's still a chance. It's like, it only takes one swing, and you're,
my God. The increase in your pitch there is so familiar. Like, I think we got this. Still got a chance.
I know, we all. Yeah.
So to that end, I kind of like this incarnation a little bit. I mean, it's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun to watch.
And chicks dig the long ball, So what
chicks dig the long ball.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
game time.
Time for the game. Before we pass it to the game, we have to thank Feldco, our sponsor for every game of every week. Feldco, the home renewal experts. Bleacher Nation is proud to partner with Feldco. For almost 50 years, Feldco has been transforming Chicagoland homes with their windows, siding, doors, and roofing. Feldco is family-owned and prides themselves on delighting their customers. With products made in the U.S. and designed specifically for the Midwest, Feldco offers the perfect balance of beauty and energy efficiency. How'd I do?
Great. Better than me.
Sign him up. All right. So, as Michael just let us know, and as Dave, of course, knows, and as everyone knows about Feldco, they are here to help you with quality windows, siding, doors, and roof. Right? Did I get the order? I want to get that order right.
Okay, you got it.
Because our game is going to follow that order a little bit here. Okay, so this is for both Michael and Dave. You can answer however you want, but I've got some questions about those things in relation to the Cubs. All right, here we go. Okay. So first, we're talking about windows. Okay. You might need to replace your windows if you had a broken window. Okay. So of current or former Cubs, we're not going to limit it. Who is the most likely to break a window across the street from Wrigley Field, requiring the services of Feldco to replace that window?
All right, Dave, I'll let you go first.
Now, that's a long bomb. That is a long bomb to hit one of those windows.
Is.
So it could be current or former Cub, you're saying?
Whatever's fun
recent,
for you.
Former?
Yeah.
I'm taking Dave Kingman all day long.
He did used to hit them down the street. Yeah.
Right. So current.
Yeah.
Well, I think that Tucker is probably my guy. Like he can load it up.
Yeah, that's
no. Wait a second. Hold on. Time out. This is a shocker because I would never have expected this given before this year. But Pete Crow-Armstong
I know
he can load it up.
It's so incredible to me when you see guys. You see someone like Jason Hayward, the physical body that should be able to destroy baseballs, can't. And then someone like Pete Crow-Armstong, who is a smaller guy. I mean, and speed is obviously his game, and the pop off his bat. And that leads me into my former Cub would be Javi Baez.
Right. Love Javi.
When you see him take batting practice, it's like, holy crap. Can he smack the ball? And he's not a huge guy, but current Cub, who I'm actually taking? Seiya Suzuki. Some of his homers, the way they come off the bat is like that thing you hear scouts describe that you don't ever realize until you see it. And you're like, it just comes off the bat different. It just, the sound is different. Yeah. And it's just like, man, he must be really good at barreling it when he barrels it, in that it just pops so crisply and so deep that his homers are the majestic homers of the Cubs right now, as far as I'm concerned. So I think those are my two guys
for sure.
I just have a couple comments on those. I can't not insert myself. One, can't believe nobody didn't say Glenn Allen Hill.
Of course, I thought that was like cheating
on the roof. Yeah, I know. Who we know, of course, he's got the distance, or Sammy for that matter.
Right.
But with
Schwarber
Cubs,
Schwarber.
I just wanted to note on Seiya, when I was thinking through this, he definitely is the one who hits those tanks, right? But it feels like most of his power is up the middle and left center, where you're not as likely to actually take one out of Wrigley and hit a window. So if you're being a huge nerd, I often am, that would be a comment. Okay. So siding, right? We know that Feldco can hook you up if you need to replace your siding. So who is the Cub most likely to need the siding at his house replaced, because he's been out there throwing the ball off of it constantly in his spare time, working on his arm, getting his reps in, and just tears apart the siding? Who needs it replaced?
So corny, and this is so corny in the best way.
I know. I love it.
So this is like, who's the baseball rat? Like who's practicing?
It kind of is.
Yeah. All right. Dave, you want to go first on this one? I'll let you take the lead.
Sure, I'll take a shot. So it may not be that he needs it today, but the guy who's done it is Dansby Swanson. I mean,
feels like it.
Yeah. Who's better, right? He just now. There's guys that, I could name a bunch of guys that I think would do it. I think, first of all, I really like the sort of the youthful enthusiasm of this team, and even the veteran guys kind of throwing it, their contribution in. Like, I'm a big Ian Happ fan when it comes to his defense. I think it's pretty hard to argue that he's one of the best in the game in left field. Mm-hmm. And he's got a great arm. Pete Crow-Armstong, he's a guy that clearly is, got one of the better arms in baseball. I mean,
sneaky good arm.
Oh my God. Yeah. He's wicked.
It's great.
And you look at Matt Shaw, we haven't seen much of him yet, but boy, he sure looks pretty solid, in third base. So these guys are all doing some damage to siding for sure.
Yeah. I feel like Nico Hoerner's like the answer for me for the guy who would be doing this a lot. But doesn't Matt Shaw give you the vibes of the guy that's working out in their backyard like every day, like even after the game, like throwing off that net thing, and then he misses a couple.
They say that I've heard multiple people say that Shaw's the first one. You hear this on every team, right? Like that he's the first one in the to get to work every day. So
you know what, that cliche is on the rise, but it's been on the decline. Best shape of his life. Haven't heard that. It's completely, people stop saying it, and I want to know who's in the best shape of their life.
Yeah,
I need to know that.
I know. Yeah, I need to know these things. Next spring, we'll bring it back.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
won that one
Doors.
with Horner as well, by the way.
Horner's, I mean,
he's a grinder.
That's why he needed surgery, because he's too many throws off of his siding. Okay, Doors. Who is most likely to break a door in the clubhouse after a game and need to get it fixed?
Let me think. There's some good answers here, surprisingly so.
Harder, I think, in the current team. Past teams, I think there were some guys that were a little more like visible in terms of their frustration when they had it.
For sure. I will say, weirdly, PCA is like he's extremely. I don't want to say emotional. It's not like the
animated.
Animated and even he's so hard on himself. Oh my God, guy's an MVP candidate, and if he pops out in like the second inning with 2 outs and no one on, he throws his helmet down. I'm like, it's all right, man. Like, it's gonna happen 7 out of 10 times, and you'll be a Hall of Famer still. So, like, he seems like a guy that could get a little frustrated, but they don't really have like a John Lackey this year, right? Maybe Justin Steele could have gotten a little fired up. He got a little mad last year at one point. I don't know. Dave, do you have anyone that feels I
think you nailed PCA. I mean, he's the guy. You see it, his frustration when he does something that, leads to sitting on the bench as opposed to being on base, right?
Yeah.
You don't see it in the outfield because he doesn't make any mistakes, but it's at the plate, he's tough on himself.
I could tell this is – wait, sorry, I have to interrupt. This is your first time doing a podcast just before a game, because you just said PCA doesn't make any mistakes in the outfield.
I know. Oh,
sorry, Dave.
We're going to have to clip that
later.
Yeah, that's going to get clipped. Oh, boy.
All right. I take that one back.
Sometimes it's the quiet guys that they've got that rage simmering just under the hood. I would note – the other day, it was a positive energy burst, but when Jameson Taillon exploded after that one strikeout, I don't know that I've ever seen him that, visceral out there. And so when I was asking this question, it popped in my head. I'm like, I don't know, maybe if he got that level of mad instead of excited, I don't know if I would want to be a door in his way.
No, he's a giant nerdy teddy bear, but that was a visceral moment. Yeah.
So who else gets a little tweaked every now and then gets a bit fiery, which is good, is Dansby Swanson. Mm-hmm. He gets, if he doesn't like a call at the plate, he's pretty quick to express himself. He will.
He's usually right.
Yeah, he's always right.
Can you guys guess mostly who I am on a wrong call? That's Ian Happ. Did you ever see him he goes, yeah. Like
doesn't turn to the umpire.
It's not good radio, but if you watch on YouTube, you'll see, and you picture
you'll see the face.
You could picture it. Believe me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, last one for Feldco, because as we all know, quality windows, siding, doors, and roofing. Okay, now this one gonna throw a little curveball. It's not about messing up the roof, because that's just a little too easy, or it's a little duplicative of the windows, but instead it's who on the Cubs, maybe might exclude PCA because he's going to be the pick, who's most likely to be unfazed by having to do roofing work. Now, if you see guys out doing roofing work, it's very comfortable out there. They're just like, boom, and I'm looking at that and I'm like, oh, mercy. I would not want to be up there doing that. But I wondered who is on the Cubs that's going to be the one up there just sort of like going around like it's nothing. No worries about falling off.
Dave, I gotta get your experience on this one. Have you been on a roof?
I'll take Michael Tucker. He seems like a pretty cool cat. Like, not a lot. That's true. He's very cool. Like not a lot phases him. So, he gets up and either, nails one deep, and it's like, I do it all the time. It's like, he's a pretty unfazed fella.
No, you're right. He does have that quality about him. I think I like Jameson Taillon. It's like every now and then I would love to see him give us a roar just to see what happens.
Yeah, just one roar.
Also, not to delay the end of this pod, but like, has Kyle Tucker had like his definitive moment yet with the Cubs? I feel like obviously he's been incredible the whole season, but like
the home run in the
really
Diamondbacks game.
Yeah.
It was very early in the season,
Mm-hmm.
but because that game was so crazy and his homer was the one that flipped. I mean, that's the early, let's call that the early leader in the clubhouse.
He needs a moment.
Could have been last night.
I know.
Could have been last night.
Because he was hurt, comes in, pitches.
Pitch hitting.
That's why I was thinking about it, by the way. It was literally on my mind. I was like, man, he needs his memorable, moment. My answer is going to be Carson Kelly, because catchers all they do is what they're told. They put their head down, they put in the work, they never complain. Catchers are like, the mules, the workhorses of the team. So you got to go, hey, Carson, you got to go up on the roof. And he's like, yeah, okay, I got it. You got it. I don't know if that's
and they get beat up
like,
a lot too. So like if he does take a tumble, he's like, I'm fine.
Or if he hits his thumb with the hammer, right?
Oh yeah. He's like, that happens.
Okay.
Well,
that
was a lot of fun.
That was that. Now that's branding right there.
Yeah, there you go.
But we never hit our thumbs.
No.
Of course not. That's why.
But you would hit your thumbs for your customers. For our customers,
we
would hit our thumbs.
Correct.
That's a freebie.
We hit our thumbs for you.
We hit our thumbs for customers.
They're gonna be like, you can't say that.
All right. Well, thank you for participating in the game, Dave. Thank you for sponsoring the game, Feldco. Thank you both for participating in the podcast. This is the BN Cubs podcast. We are here for you weekly on Thursdays. Make sure you are listening, rating, reviewing, subscribing. Check us out on YouTube. It is presented by Ankin Law 312-6million. Injury Law Made Personal. Check them out, of course, as always. And we just thank you for your time that you spend with us talking Cubs. We will see you next week. Everybody have a great weekend.